All right. Let's go ahead and get started in our new section for the day, for the month. This is how we're going to finish our semester with the Industrial Revolution. And we just finished talking about the French Revolution. We've talked about the American Revolution. And today, I'm going to argue that the Industrial Revolution was more revolutionary than both of those revolutions combined. Okay, we're going to find out here over the next 3 weeks that this Industrial Revolution that takes place in Europe is going to change our world. It's going to create the modern world. And the changes that take place are, again, more revolutionary. They're bigger changes than we're going to see that take place during these other smaller country revolutions that succeed to a certain degree, that aren't, that don't always create the massive changes that we're going to see here. So let's start off by saying that the Industrial Revolution begins in Great Britain, in England. Okay, and the book's going to give us 5 reasons why the Industrial Revolution began in England. You might want to know these reasons. First off, England was growing more food, and therefore they could feed more people for less money.
Lucia's mom says maybe 30.
So they're growing more food, and one of the main reasons why is what we're going to call the second agricultural revolution. So the first agricultural revolution was going all the way back to the Egyptians, to the Mesopotamians, the ability to farm and grow food. But in this period, we're going to find out that in Europe, and specifically in England, they find out that there was this old crop rotation system where there were always 3 fields, and one of the fields was always left empty. And the reason they did this, and you might know if you've ever had a backyard garden, is because after year, if you grow the same crops in the same soil, the soil loses its nutrients, and you can therefore no longer grow those same crops there anymore. So what they found out is that if you rotate between 3 fields and one is always empty, that it will rejuvenate its nutrients, and therefore it won't ever lose its ability to grow stuff in it. Okay? In the period we're discussing, we're going to find out that on that 3rd field, they find, the Europeans find out that you can grow certain crops that will naturally put the nutrients back in the soil. Okay? Some of the crops they grow were clovers or turnips. And these crops generally aren't crops that humans eat, but animals do. And because of this, we're going to find out that now there's more food for animals, which means that they can have more animals. And of course, animals give humans food as well. You can eat animals, and animals give milk. Okay? So we're going to find out here. So we're going to find out that this new crop rotation system allows for there to be more food for animals, which creates more foods for human. And now we're seeing that population is going to increase because starvation, because people have more food. Okay, also the Columbian Exchange brought a bunch of food from the Americas, certain foods that grew better in colder climates, like the potato. And that helped create more food in those areas. So there's more food, okay? And in England, they had more food. With more food, the lords didn't need as many workers, and therefore many English people were free to move out of the lord's manor, stop being peasants, and move to the city. in search of new jobs. Um, the city had new jobs in part because in England they had some rich businessmen who had enough money to invest in the new industry of the period. They had the money to invest in new businesses. England also, in part because of Adam Smith and laissez-faire, and the ideas of maybe the French Enlightenment thinkers, England had an economic policy of free trade, which then allowed its industrialists, its capitalists, its investors to start businesses without government interference. They also had colonies to buy their stuff and to get natural resources from. England also had a lot of coal naturally under its soil. And we're going to find out that coal is the first fuel of the Industrial Revolution, that from about 1750 to about 1900, coal is king and everything is run on coal. We probably know that around 1900, this changes to oil. Okay. And right now, we're arguably in the middle of a transitionary period from oil and coal still to more of renewable energy sources. But I digress. And lastly, again, we mentioned England had places to sell its stuff. So 5 good reasons why England was a leader in the Industrial Revolution. And really, England's first industry was the cotton industry. They made cotton. They grew it, they turned it into cloth, and they sold their cloth on a large scale across the world. There were inventions that came out during this period that helped the cotton industry, the cotton industry, increase production. Inventions like the spinning jenny, the water-powered loom. And if you think about the old days where there would be a cottage, and it would be next to a river, and there would be a water wheel that was spinning, and the river's natural flow would push that water wheel. They used that spinning motion, and they captured the energy from it, let it wind things up, and then the winding, as they would push on the loom, it would use that spinning to power the loom. So they used these rivers in the very beginning stages to power some of these new inventions. And eventually in 1782, maybe the biggest invention of all time was the steam engine. And I've been told that the same technology that is used in the steam engine is used in all engines. And I don't know this. I am not a car guy. Okay, I'm not that smart about that stuff. But that basic model, I've been told before by people who are smart about this, that this is how all engines work. Basically, the steam's going to push these pistons up and down. The pistons are going to spin the wheel, and that spinning of the wheel is where you get the energy. Okay, here's a picture of the early steam engine. I'm going to link up a video for you to watch about a glass steam engine where you can see how it actually works. And as the steam engine comes out, no longer do these industries need to be done near rivers, kind of out of the city, but now work can be done in the city. So we're going to find that factories start being built in the cities. And that brings people to the city. So we're also seeing a population shift during this period. And these workers who come from, oftentimes the peasants who lived in the countryside, when they get to these factories to work, they're going to find that these are really not fun jobs. They're actually quite horrible. And these workers, these early factory workers, were treated awfully. And that's just a little foreshadowing as we move forwards. We mentioned that, I don't know if you guys remember, okay, when I was a kid, there were these cartoons, right? And it would be like Bugs Bunny or something, and he would be shoveling coal. He'd be in a train, which was run on the steam engine. He'd be shoveling coal into the fire, and that would make the train go faster. I'm not sure if that's how modern cartoons depict it, but that was the fact. that trains ran on coal and that um, England had a lot of coal. So again, we're going to find that coal really starts this whole thing, the steam engine run on coal. Now we're going to find out that trains start to be invented, okay? But the thing about trains are that, let me see, this is, so in order to make all the train work though, they had to make a stronger type of metal. Um, Iron is a natural element that comes from the ground. Um, there was also a lot of iron in England. But the thing about iron is, and this is a paperclip, okay, I don't know if you guys can see this. Um, Iron isn't very strong. And if you exert too much force on it, it'll snap. Okay, so the early trains weren't able to work because every time the train would roll over the railroad, and I'm not going to encourage you to do this. I used to put pennies on the railroad track when I was a kid. After the train would go by, I would run and try and find my penny, and sometimes I would, and sometimes I wouldn't. But I always noticed that the railroad track was hot afterwards. So that's because of the friction that was created when the train went over it. Well, the early trains would snap the railroad track, so they had to make a stronger type of metal. Here's my paperclip. And if you look, when I exert force on it, it doesn't snap. In fact, it bends. And that's actually stronger than old iron that would snap when you put too much force on it through friction. So um, they invented a stronger type of metal through this thing called puddling, which again, I don't understand. But now what we have is we have trains, right? And if you think about it, back in the day, you had to throw all your stuff in the carriage and the horse would pull the carriage. How much stuff can a horse really pull? But on a train, you can move incredible amounts of stuff, so much weight, um, long distances. And this now allows for things to be moved around more quickly. Also, historically, boats were able to go downriver. But how do you get it back up? How do you get your boat back? That was a challenge. Now we're going to find that there was a steam boat. Okay, if you think about the steamboat, think about Disneyland. They got the boat with the kind of paddle wheel in the back. It looks like Tom Sawyer or something, right? Um, this allows boats to go upstream. And these two inventions allow transportation of goods at a quicker pace, eventually also transportation of people. So what we're finding now is that in this first half of the Industrial Revolution, 1750 to, I don't know, 1850, 1900, um, some of the changes that take place really are the steam engine, railroads, steamboats, and some of these kind of cotton industry inventions. You might want to know some. Um, and you can see this first trains only went 5 miles an hour. But by 1850, oops, how did I do there? By 1850, there were 7,000-mile railroads all throughout England, and the trains were going 40 miles an hour faster, far faster than any horse could pull stuff. And it just allows stuff to be moved quicker. With the lower prices, meant it cost less at the store, which means more people had access to buying this. We're starting to see the beginning of an industrial economy, which, by the way, our current economy is a product of. So the first half of the Industrial Revolution has begun, and life is beginning to make dramatic changes.